Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In this video we're going to talk about the influence of French on English and vice versa. Let's go. Now before starting, let's get our facts straight. English is a Germanic language, meaning it comes from German. Many years ago, that's where the language developed and then moved to England, the current England now, and the origin of English is Germanic. Now, unlike what a lot of people think, it's not coming from French, because French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese, and so on, are all Romance languages. In other words, they are Latin descendants. They relate back to Latin, that's why all of them share a great many words, and it's because all of them go back to Latin many years ago. But English is not so. The reason why English and French are close is because of the vocabulary and the conquest of the Normans in 1066. So we still have a lot of Germanic words. As a matter of fact, a lot of our everyday words are still, of Germanic roots and origins. But French vocabulary had its great impact on English, and we're going to talk about that in detail and in different aspects and fields where French impacted English quite a lot. Let's go. I'd like to start by saying that these two languages share a really rich historical and linguistic events in the past, especially right after the Norman conquest in 1066. So, let's dive in. After 1066, namely the Norman conquest, thousands of French words entered English within different fields such as law, governance, and culture. Words like court, jury, and a lot more entered the English language. Oh, even the word language itself has a French origin. Langue, une langue, a language. Now the list goes on. These were only some few examples of the fields where French had a huge impact within the English language. Let's talk about some more. Hey, by the way, if you're having second thoughts on whether or not you should learn French, let me tell you something. You already know a lot of vocabulary and words in this language. Everyday English words such as souvenir, menu, cafe, ballet, and so on are all of French origin. As a matter of fact, all the words that end in tion, shen, well, not all, let me tell you the truth, it's pretty much 90%. There's some words that are actually English, but have tion. So forget about the exceptions. 90% of the words that have or end in tion are all French. Formation, declaration, and so on. All the words, in other words, 90% of the words are French that have tion at the end. So, way to go. You already know a lot of words. Now, moving past everyday words, let's talk about some higher status words. Well, in English, you could find words of both origins, Germanic and French origins, that are everyday. Basically, you could use them every day. Words like ask, which is of Germanic root and origin, but the French version would be inquire. Now, in this case, everyday words that are French sound higher status. And not just about everyday words, that's almost true in most of the fields. So, let's move on. What about help? Instead of help, you could say assist, which is also French. Now, assist is a little bit higher status in terms of its lexical position. Now, but be careful. Assist, assister in French has a different meaning, especially these days. If you say j'assiste à un cours, it means I attend the course. I've already talked about faux amis, false friends before, so make sure you check it out. Now, you might be asking, why should the French words be the elegant ones? Or why should the French words be the higher status ones? That's a good question. Let me tell you why. The ruling class right after 1066 was the French. So they were the ruling class and they had the royal family. So there was a disparity between the language that was spoken in the royal family, which was, they were French, and the ordinary regular people who were English. Now, this made a huge distinction between what they thought was the higher class and elegance, basically the royal family, and then that was considered and viewed as what should be elegant, for obvious reasons, because they're the kings and the royal family, and that's considered what's really elegant. Now, fun fact, if you take a look at, for example, the names of the animals and their meats that we eat, if you pay close attention, the meats are of French, the name for the meat is of French origins, but the animal itself remained and still has its Germanic roots. For example, cow, definitely Germanic, totally English, but the meat is not cow, the meat is beef, which is of French origin, meaning the royal class got to consume the meat, and then the working class, who still were English, they dealt with the names of the animals more often than the meat in it. So the word for meat of a cow is beef because the royal class enjoyed their beef, while the working class, the English, the originally English people, dealt with the animals and then raised them, and then that's why the word for the animals stayed the same. So this goes on for other animals as well, okay? Now, cow was just an example. What about pigs and porks? Exactly. Pig remained the same, Germanic word, totally English, but pork, or the way we say it in French, porc, was of French origin. Because again, for the same reason, the pork, the meat, was consumed by the royal family, and that's where the word spread. But the pig, well, nobody cared much about an animal other than the farmers and the English people. So the word remained the same. Totally Germanic, in other words, English. It remained English and didn't change over time. Well, let's be fair and square. Let's be fair. Let's talk about English's influence on French as well. Unlike French that had a huge impact on English many, many years ago, English's impact just is about today. For example, pop culture or tech words are usually English and are well accepted in the French language. Now I'm going to talk about this a little more. Let's give you some examples. Words like weekend, selfie, parking are all of English origin. Now, there's also the concept of franglais, which is Franglish, the blending of the two languages, that where you speak French, but you have a whole bunch of English words. Now, be careful. This concept of franglais is really frowned upon and criticized by a lot of people. Why? Because, well, the French love their language. Why not? And they want to preserve the language as it is, and they particularly don't like adding a bunch of words, whereas there are already the French versions for them. This is happening right now in Quebec. They have a bunch of programs and protests about why the French should stay the same and why we should forget about the new tech or culture, pop culture, English words. We don't need them. We could use the French versions. As an example, in Quebec, you could see the word courrier instead of email. Email has got its internationality all around the world. I think most languages use email when talking about emails. But in Quebec and also in France, they don't like it. A lot of people say and refer to it as courrier. Well, fair enough. They want to preserve their language as it is, and they don't want it to change. But I have a question for you. Do you think this is going to be the way they want? I mean, don't languages change all the time? Don't they influence each other? Well, I don't know. Maybe by resisting it, it's going to be postponed, but not avoided totally. What do you think? If you have any other questions, ask me in the comment sections down below, and I'll see you soon. Au revoir. À plus.